You wake up. The house is on fire. It is 1665. The roof is thatched. The walls are wood. The floor is wood. The furniture is wood. Everything you own is wood. The flames are already in the upper rooms. Your kids are screaming. You grab what you can carry. A blanket. A small box of coins. Maybe a stool, for some reason. You stand outside. In the street. In your nightclothes. In the dark. And you watch your entire life turn into smoke and orange light. There is no fire department. There is no emergency number. There is no neighbor with a garden hose, because garden hoses do not exist yet. There is just you, the flames, and the cold mathematical reality that everything you own is now ash. This is not a rare event. London in the 1600s burns down all the time. Small fires every week. Big fires every few years. People build the houses back, put new thatch on the roof, and wait for it to happen again. There is no plan. There is no system. There is no guy from Allstate showing up to assess the damage. There is just bad luck and a lot of wood. So what actually happened when your house burned down 400 years ago? And here is the wild part. The answer is that 1 year later, a fire so massive happens that it accidentally invents the modern fire department, the modern insurance industry, and, in a roundabout way, the entire concept of property protection as we know it today. The story starts in a bakery, ends with private firefighters fighting each other in the street, and includes a guy who paid his volunteer firefighters in beer. The trail goes from one terrible night in 1666 to the smoke detector in your kitchen right now, and once you know the chain, you cannot unsee it. Let's talk about what actually happened. The night of September 2nd, 1666, in a bakery on Pudding Lane in central London. The bakery belonged to a man named Thomas Ferrynor, who was the king's official baker. After midnight, sparks from his oven catch a stack of firewood. Ferrynor wakes up. He thinks he has put it out. He has not. 3 hours later, his entire shop is a blazing inferno. The wind picks up. The fire jumps to the next house. Then the next one. Then the next street. Within hours, half the city is on fire. By the time it was finally stopped 4 days later, the fire had destroyed roughly 13,200 houses, 87 churches, the Royal Exchange, the Guildhall, and the original St. Paul's Cathedral. The total damage was estimated at £10 million. London's annual income at the time was about £12,000. Honestly, the math is insane. The city was financially destroyed. People who had been wealthy on Saturday were standing in fields on Wednesday with nothing. The debtors' prisons overflowed. The Lord Mayor of London froze when given the chance to stop the fire by tearing down houses, and the fire just kept going. The lesson everybody learned in the smoke and the panic was the same one. We need a system. Something has to exist between a fire starting and a family losing everything. And out of those ashes came something genuinely new. Here is where things get genuinely interesting. The man who saw the opportunity was an English economist and physician named Nicholas Barbon. He looked at the disaster, looked at the math, and figured out something nobody had really tried before in this form. He would let Londoners pay him a small annual fee, and in return, if their house burned down, he would pay to rebuild it. In 1680, he set up the world's first proper fire insurance company. He called it the Fire Office. He even employed his own private fire brigade, made up of Thames watermen, the guys who normally rowed boats up and down the river. He gave them uniforms. He gave them buckets, axes, and hand pumps. and he gave their houses a small metal plate to nail above the door. That plate had his company's logo on it, and it was called a fire mark. The deal was simple. Pay the premium, get a fire mark, get the brigade if you ever needed it. The first surviving fire office policy was written on August 7th, 1682, for a man named Sir William Twisden on a house south of the Barbican, insured for £130. By 1690, about 1 in 10 houses in London had a fire mark over the front door. Honestly, kind of beautiful in its weirdness. Now here is where things get genuinely wild. Other entrepreneurs saw Barbon's idea and copied it. By the early 1700s, London had multiple competing fire insurance companies: the Friendly Society, the Hand in Hand, the Sunday, the Union, the Westminster. Each one had its own fire mark. Each one had its own private fire brigade. And each one only put out fires at houses that displayed their specific fire mark. Let that sink in for a second. If your house caught fire, the first thing the firefighters did when they arrived was look up at your wall to see whose mark was on it. If it was their company's mark, they put the fire out. If it was a competitor's mark, they just sat there and waited. Sometimes, the brigades would actually fight each other in the street while a house burned to the ground because both companies showed up and could not agree who was supposed to do the work. The volunteer pumpers, by the way, were paid in beer. Water at the time was not safe to drink, so the insurance companies just kept handing out pints of ale to keep the pumping going. The brigade foreman submitted expense reports for the beer. Imagine your fire department running on tabs at the pub. Honestly, respect. This system, ridiculous as it sounds, was the entire firefighting infrastructure of London for almost 150 years. The government did not run a fire department. The government did not even particularly care. The market did the whole thing. Here is why this still matters. The reason we have public fire departments today, the reason you can dial 911 and a truck shows up regardless of who you are or what you can afford, is because of what came next in this story. In 1833, the major London insurance companies got tired of fighting each other in the street. They combined their separate fire brigades into one unified force called the London Fire Engine Establishment. By 1865, this private operation was so essential that the British government had to formally take it over and turn it into the publicly funded London Fire Brigade. That is where the modern fire department comes from. Not from the king, not from Parliament, not from some genius philosophical movement about public safety. From a bunch of insurance companies deciding it was cheaper to run one shared fire department than to keep paying each other back when their brigades put out the wrong fires. Every fire truck on every street in the world today, in some sense, descends from that decision. So when you smell smoke in the middle of the night and you reach for the phone to call 911, you are using a system that exists because a baker named Thomas Fariner did not properly put out his oven in 1666. You are calling a service that was invented by insurance companies in the 1700s, paid for in beer, fought over in the streets, and eventually folded into the government because everybody finally realized it worked better that way. The flames you were watching as a kid eat your house in that opening scene have, over almost 400 years, been transformed into a number you can dial from your bed. That is one of the most quietly important developments in human civilization, and almost nobody knows the story. There are not many things in the modern world that exist because of a single bad night in 1666. The London Fire Brigade is one. The entire global property insurance industry is another. The idea that a house could be a financial asset worth protecting from disaster, instead of just a thing you owned and prayed about, started in those ashes. Before that night, a fire was just a fate. Something that happened to you. Something you survived, or did not survive. After that night, slowly, over the next 200 years, a fire became something different. It became a problem that could be managed, a risk that could be priced, a disaster that other people, far away, would help you carry. That shift in thinking, from fate to risk, is one of the quiet revolutions of the modern world. It started with a stack of firewood next to an oven on Pudding Lane. The fire is out. The bakery is gone. Pudding Lane has a monument now. The fire marks are mostly in museums. The insurance is everywhere. The brigade is on call. The beer, sadly, is no longer included.